We might be live soon, Kinga. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect.
The streaming is really delayed though.
Let's see. I can hear you perfect.
Okay. I mean, I can hear you perfectly too, but the actual what I'm seeing like uh, like what I'm seeing in the live stream here is basically very pixelated and yeah, we're like delayed.
Okay. I have the source here, so it should be fine on this end. As long as you can hear me fine, we can do this.
Okay.
Good. All right, and I'm also streaming on Instagram. So if you go ahead,
Mm, I don't think you are.
live on Instagram. Yeah, how are you, Nova?
There we go.
And I'm gonna ask you. Live on Instagram. Yeah, how are you, Nova? Okay, wave, Kinga. Perfect. And I'm gonna ask you. This is a different angle now. What do you think? Okay, wave, Kinga. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. All right. So let's get this started, and we're gonna start the Wait Time podcast. Thank you very much to anyone who's joining on the Instagram, and also for the first time we're doing the broadcasting straight from YouTube too. So to everyone, this is the live taping. Remember that it's gonna be different to what we're gonna have on the podcast, and you're gonna have this experience firsthand. Okay, so we are ready to start the podcast and go in 3, 2. 2020 has been an out of the ordinary year. How many birthday plans, trips, graduation ceremonies, weddings, conferences, sports finals have been postponed until further notice? Truth is, we are all living in the same situation. It is what you make out of this reality what counts. It's time to start fresh. All of those disadvantages we once thought we had don't matter anymore. Businesses, employees, events, people, economy, we have all hit a reset button. Today, we're going to explore the similarities with past global crises and how we, as humans, came together to get out of them. One thing is certain, we got out of them with more knowledge. Knowledge that is stamped in our DNA, accumulated for centuries, and has evolved to where we now are. What's gonna happen next? Welcome to the Wait Time podcast. Okay, and I want to give a welcome to my co-host Kinga. How are you doing, Kinga?
Hey guys, I am good.
Yeah.
It's a
How's it going?
Saturday.
How
It's
was how
nice
was last
outside.
week?
The same as always, right?
Nothing new, different.
No. Mike, we are in quarantine, so 3 months. The week is the same. Like it really is.
Are you aware that this weekend is a long weekend?
I found out on Friday. I totally forgot that it was actually going to be the long weekend. Because
Yeah.
usually for this long weekend, I make some sort of plans. It's either going to be getting out of the city or planning a bunch of bonfires or something. With my family. So we did not make any kind of planning at all. So to me, it was just like I forgot. Like I just forgot.
Well, you know what? It will be interesting to know, and everyone who is right now on the live stream, to just give us a shout of how many people just realized this week that that Monday is a holiday, right? So because I heard so many people in conversations, I've been like mentioning it repeatedly, and you're not the first person I hear to say like, really this weekend. And I know that for on a yearly basis, this holiday is the one that pretty much breaks everything or starts the good weather, so to speak. But
Yep,
in
it
in that
does.
sense, right now the weather is beautiful. What do you think of this past week? Did you wear shorts?
No, it wasn't that warm. It was not that warm, Mike, at all. No. Again, it's hard to enjoy the weather when you have to be stuck at home and the apartment building that you live in decided to renovate the balconies and you don't have one. So, yeah, I don't really want to talk about the weather.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think that's a topic I would like to pursue right now.
You know what's gonna be one topic that a lot of people are gonna pursue, and people who shave their legs, is that have you shaved? Like, are you ready for when the time comes? And is that an option for you?
That's a really weird question.
I know, but like that's definitely a topic that everyone, right? Like we're in quarantine, so a lot of people have like just left things change in their body, right? Like I know of people who have also said that okay, I'm gonna even switch the other end because now is the time, right? Like this is like a once in a lifetime situation. Have you done something similarly that you're like just trying to prove during this period?
I think when it comes to things like personal hygiene and taking care of yourself, I think actually for a lot of people, doing things like doing your hair, shaving, whatever, doing a at-home manicure and pedicure is all part of just taking care of yourselves and, feeling normal. So, all the power to the people that are just letting it all hang out and do whatever. I think I'm more on the side of the people that are like, you know what, I'm going to keep up with a bit of the routine because it makes me feel better. So I
Mm.
actually gave myself a little like pedicure this week because it was just nice, just like soak my feet, do whatever you need to do them. So I actually enjoyed that. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to stop that.
No, the other thing that is not only like the personal hygiene, but also the extremes, right? If someone used to cut their hairs every month, right? Like it's been almost 3 months, really, of
Yeah.
this situation. I've seen many of my friends who are just like now they just shave completely because they said, you know what? I don't even know when I'm gonna do this, right? So it's like the two extremes. I completely agree. I am like you, Kinga, in the sense that I'm also, like grooming myself. Like my wife gave me a very nice haircut. It's one of those things that no one knew that she had that talent, right? And that is exactly today's question for everyone who's watching the streaming live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Instagram. What is a skill that you have learned during this quarantine that you didn't know that you had? You should have you must have one, Kinga. You're like very versatile and very smart. What is something that you have learned during this quarantine?
Podcasting.
That's a good one. That's a good, and you do it very well, I gotta say.
Thank you.
In my case, I have learned to cook pasta. So I don't know if you
Ooh,
know a
like
little
from
bit of my.
scratch?
No,
Are
well,
you
not
making
from
your
scratch.
own noodles and everything?
No, but because I don't have the machine. But
Uh,
here's the thing: when I worked for 3 years in restaurants, I also did the back of house.
mhm.
So I never had the chance to work in an Italian restaurant. Therefore, like pasta for me was something unknown that I knew that was always gonna be there, right? So for me, it
Mhm.
wasn't like, oh, I need to learn this skill. And all the chefs I work with as well, they didn't have that specialty on pasta. So I left it there. Now, because we try to buy a little bit more perishables or non-perishables
Yep.
items, like pasta. Pasta is like so versatile in that sense. You can make so many things, from lasagna to like a cold pasta to a warm risotto with some other things of pasta, right? So now I'm working with the pasta, and I'm just learning so much from the masters of pasta. There's Jamie Oliver. I follow Jamie Oliver. Then I follow also Matty Madison, Toronto, and I've been learning a lot. And then Jamie Oliver has as well another Italian like cook or like chef, very very knowledgeable as well, right? Like, and one of the things I've learned is to crush things with your hand. I don't know how well of a cook are you, Kinga?
I'm pretty good actually.
Yeah, what's your
Um,
specialty?
I don't think I have one. I just have a throw it all together type of thing and cook whatever I like. But um, yeah, I don't really have a specialty. I'm not vegan, but I can't eat a lot of dairy, so I had to really reinvent like sauces and cheesiness and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I will say proudly that I can make a cheesy like sauce quite easily and quickly.
That's amazing. That sounds delicious. And you know what's the key of the sauce also? The like, how do you make it thick? What's your secret?
Flour.
Just a little bit of like dash.
Well, yeah, I mean, you basically have to put in a little bit of flour to kind of set everything, and then pour in, whatever almond milk or cashew. Like
Oof.
cashew milk is way better than almond milk because almond milk's got a bit of a sweetness to it,
Mhm.
and then a lot of nutritional yeast.
Nice. I
Yeah.
use nutritional yeast, and it's amazing. Well, my wife is vegetarian, so I
Hmm.
actually eat meat, like red meat or any kind of meat for that matter, once a week. But the rest of the days I have to be creative, and nutritional yeast gives it like that crunchiness and that texture that it's amazing. So you knew how to cook before, eh? Like these
Quarantine?
conversations are very elevated. Like nutritional yeast is not an easy ingredient to work with.
No, I mean, I've been living on my own. I mean, I don't know what late 30-year-old doesn't know how to cook meals. I'm not sure
Oh,
how you would have gotten to that stage in life
I
without
know a
knowing how to
lot of
cook
them.
something. I don't know how they did it.
Because
Like I've been living on
they
my own
order
so long.
online. They order online
Eh,
food, and they order for 2 or 3 days. So like
yeah,
Indian food, Chinese food, all those dishes that you order for parties of five, they order and then they just like reheat. You don't have those friends? Can't believe you.
I mean, not really. Everyone I know, like they don't order in very often. It's once in a while. Um, because cooking's fun and it's much more cheaper than ordering in all the time.
And I think that now with the situation of the quarantine, also we've learned that there's still people,
Hmm.
and kudos for all those services, and we support small restaurants too that are operating, but it's not as frequent as for many people, because now they have the time. I think it's a matter more of a time constraint rather than actually enjoying food or not. Agreed?
I
Time.
don't know. I think some people don't know how to cook because they've never tried.
Hmm.
And maybe they are trying to create some very elaborate dishes when honestly you just need to learn how to cook like like you need to know how to cook rice, some sort of a meat or vegetables, and you're good. Like also an understanding of spicing, like how do you use spices?
Yeah.
Like you don't just learn. I mean, obviously a lot of what I picked up is just watching my parents cook when they were in the kitchen. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't. I don't know. It's a very foreign concept to me that someone does not cook at all.
I'll tell
Very
you what.
foreign.
I'll tell you what. And I'm just doing putting it here because I know that it's gonna go to history. When we're allowed to have visitors, I'm gonna cook for you. Whatever meal you want. Like I have one recipe of pierogies. Again, right now I'm not making
Ooh.
anything, But I have some recipe of pierogies that I just put in myself with cheddar and jalapenos. What do you think about
You know,
that?
well, I'm Polish, and that to me sounds sacrilegious, to be honest with
I
you.
know, but I'm a
Um,
fusion. Like I'm a man of the world. I'm like for me, like fusion cuisine is like everything. Although I respect a lot the traditional way, but I also like to put like you know, like that spin. But you be the judge. Let's not jump into the conclusions before trying them.
I know,
And
but like my grandma used to make we
what did
used to
you?
make pierogies from scratch, and the ones we make are the ones with either meat filling
Hmm.
or the other one, which is like the vegetarian one, which is like cabbage and stewed and all that kind of stuff. So we never ate the cheese and
Potato.
potato one. So yeah, so I have very high standards,
You
and
know
also like
what?
if you don't fry them,
Why don't we exchange? You bring some, I'll cook half, and then we'll try and we decide.
let's
It,
talk about this.
it's
Let's
a
let's table that. Let's table that
oh
because
my god, you're very difficult to.
my
You're very
pro
difficult.
I know how long it's going to take me to make these pierogies, so that's why.
That's fair. Fair
That's like a
enough.
time commitment. And if we're allowed to go out, I don't know if I want to spend 2 days cooking pierogies
For
once I'm
me.
allowed to go outside. For anybody.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So we'll
Um,
see. We'll see.
a couple of things that caught my attention this past week were also the situation that happened in Germany, where the rules and the restrictions of people going out relaxed a little bit, but now
hmm
it's surged again with some numbers. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean the same thing happened in South Korea, right? I think they got a little bit cocky because of how well they had handled the situation to date. So for people that don't know, South Korea until recently still had pretty much everything open. So their nightclubs were opened, and it turned out that they had a massive outbreak because one man went to like three nightclubs in a night and he had COVID-19 and he like infected over 100 people. So they've since now actually had to lock down clubs and whatnot. So yeah, I think some countries are really trying to push for the end of the lockdown sooner than they should, and I think they're ignoring the examples that we've seen from China and from Italy and Spain in terms of what happens if like I think China's actually managed the quarantine lockdown quite well, whereas you have Italy where the best meme that I saw at first when this was happening on Twitter is you had the compilations of the Italian mayors yelling at people.
Yes.
Super hilarious. Google it, guys. You will not be disappointed. But basically, people weren't taking the lockdown seriously. So, yeah, I think it's kind of like a cautionary tale. And I'm happy to see that Canada's kind of going more conservatively and not really opening things up very quickly, or at least not like in Ontario and like the big cities. At least those ones are really taking it seriously.
And that video that went viral, I watched it too, and it was hilarious because
Oh
you
my God.
don't you are not used to see diplomatics speaking that on that way, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I will encourage everyone who's watching now is for please, please, please do not let your guard down. I've seen many people
Yep.
now that the weather is nice that they forget that we're still in this. And until we don't have a vaccine, we're probably going to be having extreme measures. And the most important thing, and this is me personally, I feel like because I've survived 3 months without getting it, sometimes I was like, "Oh no, yeah, I'm built to resist," right? So it comes to my mind, like my awareness grows again and say, like, "Hey, do not let your guard down yet," even though now people are getting used to and feeling more normal in a way,
hmm
right? So that's very interesting too. Very good thing for the businesses in Toronto that also open the curbside pickups. Have you had the chance to experience the curbside pickup?
Oh, I not this week, so I've done the pet store curbside pickup
Hmm.
last week because obviously I have a cat, and she requires her good food, guys.
Hmm.
It was super simple. You can email or call usually, and you say this is my order, and then they tell you it's ready. You go pick it up, stand outside in a little line. The thing is, though, you can't pay cash, so you gotta either have a credit card or tappable debit because they'll take it in a little bag, take it inside, and kind of pay you for like they'll pay for it. So I
Mhm.
think the interesting thing experience I had was that whole moment when you give your card and you're like, this is so bizarre that I'm giving my card and I don't see where it's going. But at the same time, it's the employees are not going to steal my card or something else like that. So that's a bit of an interesting adjustment I found with that aspect. It's kind of weird, and we got to trust people, and I think we can.
And I told you yesterday, or like on Wednesday, we were talking, right? Like I'm very excited because tomorrow I'm going to have the curbside pickup experience in Fort Erie, because the chef Matheson is
Ooh.
doing the barbecue, and they sell out in less than 2 hours on Monday, and
Hmm.
the for what I've understand, and we're probably gonna post a video and some pictures. They have a barricade. Okay, so that's one thing differently a little bit from the center of the city, right? Like Fort Erie has more space, so they are doing the outside barbecue on factory, and they have a big parking lot. So what they do is pretty much you wait in your car, you have a slot of time
Hmm.
to pick up, and then when they call your name, you have to walk. They described about 50 meters into a barricade just to pick up yours, right? And then it's gonna be with your name and well packed, and then you're gonna get out of that barricade, and then the next person comes in. So that way everyone guarantees, right? And this is especially a good idea on events that sell out, or music events in the future as well, because these type of things that usually bring like thousands of people, like this successful initiative, it's also gonna be like super interesting how everything is gonna evolve.
Yeah.
Cool. All
Well, that
right,
sounds
so let's
interesting.
start
So,
let's start let's start with our topic today, because we've been preparing this for a long time. Hey, and everyone on O'Brien also on Instagram. We were preparing a lot of this topic, as I mentioned in the intro, in the opening remarks, about what are the similarities of past crises and what we have now, right? So just to give you a little bit of and maybe you can help me out, Kinga. I'm gonna start with the list that I compile. Like I'll do one, you start another one, you say the other one, and then we're gonna see out of those ones which ones are like the most relevant for you. So I have here the 11th century leprosy.
hmm.
What's the next one that you have?
Then, well, the Black Plague or bubonic plague was a big thing, but 1350 Black Plague, so a quarter of the population was, died. That's Europe, though, isn't it? I think that was
Hmm.
only Europe, that big one. Yeah.
And then in the 1495 as well, the Colombian exchange, that was in a way very impactful for society, for humans too. What else do we have
What
there?
is it for everyone that might not know what it is,
The Colombian,
Mike?
yeah. Well, basically is when Colombia, Christopher Columbus, like discover the not discover, but conquer
Stumbled upon?
yeah, stumble upon. Yeah, discover is a strong word, my friends.
Uh-huh.
The continent of America, and there were a lot of lives lost in that situation, right? Then we had
Yes. Yes.
what do we have next? Some others that you remember?
Well, before we get, because we're making a big of a time jump here from 1495 to 1817, but the one thing that is very relevant to the Columbian Exchange is the spread of smallpox amongst the indigenous population North and South America. So that was actually probably a really huge pandemic that occurred, and the impacts of that are obviously still being felt today by the indigenous populations of the world. So that's a really big one as well. But
Amazing that.
then,
Then we have the cholera too, right? The
Yeah.
cholera, and at this time we still have the cholera. What else we
Hmm.
have there?
And then we've got 1855, bubonic plague made its reappearance. Um,
1875, the measles.
yes, the thing that we're vaccinated against now.
Uh
And
huh.
then
That's
1899, the Russian flu. This
and
also occurred in Poland. I did not read into this, so I will be honest. Don't know exactly too much about it.
and this one is definitely the one that has stuck the most. Spanish
Hmm.
flu in 1918,
Yeah.
right? And
And
then more recent.
well, we have SARS. Obviously, we got Ebola, H1N1, and Zika. Like the COVID-19 is just really the big one that's finally like struck the whole globe. But we've had a bunch in the last, what is it, like 20 years, I guess.
Yeah, imagine that also when we talk and when we see the big picture of what crises are too. The crisis is hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, right? They have a lot of similarities because it's out of the ordinary. There's like people's lives lost in situations like that. So
Yeah.
all these crises, at the end of the day, as humans, we have said like we have survived them, right? Like it's not like it's gonna be a meteor and the dinosaurs are gonna be is extinct. In our case, we have adapted, we have evolved, right? As I mentioned earlier, it's in our DNA of evolution now to just try to survive on these type of things, right? So the moment that
Hmm.
we are living is also another lesson to be learned that we're gonna pass to our future generations. Huh? What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think of that thought?
Before we get there, I think I wanted to address one thing for everyone on the live stream. We are not mentioning wars or anything else in this list because that's a totally different type of topic. So we recognize that a lot has happened, from that perspective, but we're not going to talk about that today at all. So, yes, Mike, I agree with you. Like, every time there's been a major, pandemic, and especially I find, so I mean, regional crises obviously can have an impact on change in society, but it's really been like these humongous pandemics in particular that. And we're kind of facing the same thing during those times. What you will find is it kind of exposes, the it exposes our society and how we're viewed or the issues we have to us very strongly. So when we're talking about, the Black Plague and bubonic plague that occurred in, the Middle Ages, one of the things that came out of that is you basically had, if one third of the population died, who died? It was usually workers. So what you actually instead had is you had this kind of shifting in the class of workers that basically rose up and said, "Hey, we don't want to just be serfs anymore. We actually want some rights, and we want to have some more money than we were having before." So that plague actually kind of shifted the societal structure that had been in place before and gave people that had less access to resources that access that they needed. Then obviously, 1918 with the Spanish flu. It happened around World War One, so it's kind of a weird thing. Like that's the reason most of us never hear about it because it's like, hey, World War One, and by the way, there was the Spanish flu. But after this time, we obviously saw a huge increase in, human rights. Like women finally got, the right to vote. And part of that was because they actually had to act as nurses during this time. So they kind of had to step out of their role and they wanted to. So I think there's a lot of things that we can look forward to making positive changes out of this time. So,
I, you know what? Now that you're mentioning about the nurses, so I knew that around that time was a significant movement for women being empowered, but I never put it together until now that you're mentioning it, right? Because that nurturing aspect as well, and like they were in war, but like, why aren't you like why a war? Why something so negative? Just like open our eyes and said, oh, I guess we should be equal, right? In helping. So I'm glad that that happened, and of course we can anticipate so many other things that could happen after this situation. And around that time, like I know it was 1914, but around that time, like well, so it was that decade was so impactful in human history, right? Like the Titanic happened during that time. And I think that what's interesting is that during that period, we're talking about exactly 100 years ago. Like,
Yes, we are.
how crazy it is that 100 years later, boom, we are in a similar situation, different ecosystem in terms of as human, we need to get together and make this work out. What about the beliefs that happen with, like plagues, or sometimes people think that, oh, this is like a punishment from the higher powers, and also other beliefs like the cats too, right? Like the cats have to do something with the beliefs of on different crises before.
Well, it's funny that you say that because we're facing very similar issues right now with all the conspiracy theories around what caused COVID-19, which I don't want to get into right now. But you would think that, again, like you said, 100 years ago we had the Spanish flu. You'd think that we would be kind of a little bit more ahead in terms of not believing weird myths and whatnot in terms of what causes a virus, because we actually have science now. Yes, so like, again, I'm going to go back to the Black Plague in the Middle Ages because if you guys listened to the first one, I mentioned that I actually studied medieval history in university. So that's kind of one of my favorite topics and something I know about. But so the bubonic plague in the Middle Ages, you gotta understand, people did not know what a virus was, how it spread, or anything else like that. I mean, people still thought the Earth was flat and on top of a giant turtle or something, like, so when the plague started to hit, people thought it was a punishment from God. Like, I know this is kind of a hard thing to wrap your mind around, that you would think that God was punishing you and all these people around you because, there were not enough, there were sinners, there were people that didn't believe in the religion. But I watched this movie as part of this prep called Pilgrim. And it kind of did a good example. It's not about the Black Plague at all. It's about a bunch of monks that have to take a relic to the Pope to help win the war, to win something or other. And the way in which some of the monks felt and engaged about the importance of God and everything was very interesting. So if you want to understand how people thought about God back then, watch that movie. It's really interesting. But so they thought that, especially during the bubonic plague, hey, God is punishing us. So their response obviously was not to do social distancing at the beginning or anything else like that, because he didn't understand how anything spread. Instead, they started doing, the kind of religious processions and kind of events that they had to. So they would basically go on these processions together from town to town and be like, here we are, Christians and whatnot. And they would also do, I was supposed to write this down, the people that would self-flagellate themselves. There was like a big movement around the Middle Ages that they would do that. They would flagellate themselves and join the processions. And again, like, they were bleeding, they were dirty. It's not like they were like taking baths or anything else like that regularly. And people would literally take their hands, put them in their wounds, and like and then touch their eyes and stuff like that. So as you can imagine, that actually spread the the disease more than it actually helped. But as I did more research around this, so again, we also had then they started to, sorry guys, one pause. Bit of a ramble there. But also in the Middle Ages, in some communities, they actually turned against, minority populations. So the Jewish population around Europe, there was a lot of progmos. I'm proud to say that time in Poland didn't occur. The king kind of welcomed all the Jews in and says, whatever, you can live here. But that was massive. There was probably some witch hunts as well, too, guys. Like, people were kind of going nuts. So a lot of weird, they thought cats had something to do with it. I don't know. But
And
the
you know why
one
cats?
good thing, because they're the devil or something. I don't understand it.
No, okay, so
But what?
okay, so by the way, you're enlightening us. Like whatever you said, like I don't know, like if you were thinking that at one point where you were studying history, you were gonna be able to enlighten so many people. And right now I'm just being amazed of all these things because everything makes sense. So for me is that I have this in my personal pictures on social media because it's so representative. It says history repeats itself because each generation refuses to read the minutes of the last meetings. So everything that you're saying right now, I can just translate it into the now. So
Yes.
the cats and mice and rats was like a belief as well, right? Like again, in history, we only listen to one side, but I wouldn't be surprised because cats, they had, like cats have been so interesting. We're gonna make an episode in the future about them, but cats in ancient Egypt, for example, were considered like semi-gods, right? Like they were
Yes,
part
they
of
were.
like that big like when the king went to like passed away, they bury as well the cat alive with the king. So then we have another section in history when the cats also they were believed to be demons and the opposite of what we was
Yes.
believed after. So that means that people were eliminating cats, like literally just cats, you're a cat, out, right? And
Yes. Sadly, guys.
this led to an increase on rodents. And because rodents, and as we know, any virus and any pandemic, not any virus, but every like big disease comes from animals' mutations into our bodies. That's what it's believed that the Black Plague, because there were not enough cats, and that's why like all the rodents started like spreading more and more bacteria, and that's how the virus evolved. Again, like take it with a grain of salt. Like we're very honest on the sense that like what is history, right? Like history is just like one of the sides of the real situation. So I'm so happy that now we're in 2020 and we can have these debates and see and challenge pretty much everything that we've learned so far.
Yeah. But the Black Plague was not spread by rats. It was the fleas, but the fleas lived on the rats. That's one part you forgot.
Oh, look
I
at
don't.
that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't the rats. Everyone always thinks it's the rats, but it's not. It was the fleas that live on the rats. But yes, as you can imagine, people are scared, killed off all the cats in their towns, and all of a sudden they've got more rats, and the fleas are spreading it. Again, a lot of it is panic based. I think people, when they're scared, they make bad decisions out of fear, right?
Bad decision. And those are not good decisions.
But those are not. But okay, let's not. I don't want to talk down. I don't want to leave people here with the thought that the Middle Ages were all very brutal and no one learned anything, because they did. Because the word quarantine and the concept of quarantine comes from the Middle Ages. So eventually they did figure out that this disease is spreading, and what they would do is, I believe this came out of Italy, they would basically quarantine the soldier, any kind of, they would quarantine sailors for 30 days that came from any kind of port. They say, hey, you got to stick here on 30 days. If you're uninfected, then you're good. Because that's actually how it spread so fast, was along the major trade routes. And it would the plague would get on a ship with all these people that are confined on this tiny little boat for whatever years, and they'd go to their port and they'd end up at port either sick or dying and whatnot, and that's how they spread it. But yes, that's where the word quarantine comes from.
Oh my God, I'm learning so much. Wow, this is like an online course brought to you by
Almost.
Kinga.
It's fun to do some research when you're stuck inside, right?
I know. Don't remind us. Please don't remind us. I already forgot.
Well, it's, you can go into I like to go as I'm sure a lot of other people also go into internet search, go into holes on the internet in terms of you focus on a topic. Usually it's something stupid or entertaining, but you can also go into an internet hole on some sort of historical thing too. That can also be fun.
Yeah, no, so internet vortex is a thing for sure. Speaking of internet vortex, what is the skill that you've learned so far? I know that we have many people on the live stream on Instagram. The best experience is on YouTube. So go to youtube.com/w8time to also have the experience of w8time indeed. So now, what's our conclusion of all these past crises and how we as humans evolve? What do you think, Kinga?
What do I think?
What's the conclusion for this?
I am being hopeful. My conclusion is that this time for us in our kind of nation, in our world history, is going to force us to make some very serious changes that we've been dragging our feet on. So things like, universal income, for example, or the employment and the environment. We're going to be forced to make some major changes, and I'm kind of looking forward to us making the positive changes in our kind of societal history and see where we go. So I'm hopeful. I'm excited.
I'm hopeful too. Likewise, I think that if we were growing, for example, technology, I'm a tech geek.
Yes.
For me, technology, if we were growing at a rapid pace, right now we're growing at an exponential size because we are getting so much done thanks to technology. So it's just a matter of time when that research and the technology also is gonna help to find that vaccine. But I wanna also include a little bit of the similarities with other crises that we already mentioned and what you see now. So you also were saying, right, like this, what I call the conspiracy theories could be translated into this beliefs of people who were just giving the reason, trying to find an explanation. Because as we mentioned before, these are the times when people started to be more philosophical, starting to questioning the big questions of life, what are we, why are we here, right? So all those conversations in your mind at the end of the day lead to a lot of thoughts that we didn't have time before to do. So for example, one of the things that I've noticed, and this is, we talked about it earlier, is that lines, right? Lines, it's something that comes with crisis. Shortages of supplies is another thing that all crisis, whether that is a natural disaster or a crisis like the one that we're living in, or an economic crisis even, have that in common. But there's another one, like shortage of labor, for example. It's good.
Yes.
And have you had the chance to go to the flower aisle in the supermarket lately?
Oh my God. So I have not joined the baking bread trend at all yet. So I still have some flour. But yes, every time I walk into a superstore and walk past the flour and yeast aisle, it's it's all gone. Now, granted, I haven't tried Bulk Barn, and actually, I think you can actually get some at the Pat Market
You are
in Little Korea.
right. You are
They
right.
probably have some.
You are right. You know what? That just makes me think because there's so many restaurants and pubs also that are now doing like curbside pickup groceries. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna look into that because here's the thing. Like I posted month and a half ago. My wife did like a couple of loaf of bread, but it was like so good, and we have like this butter with garlic. So it
Oh,
was like there's
nice.
nothing better than fresh bread,
Yes.
loaf of bread. And since then, I haven't seen anything. Even the yeast, right? Like as you mentioned
God, I
too, like
know.
they're out. So
Yeah.
I know there's a big trend, but it's reasonable, right? Like flour, and as we know in history too, like wheat, everything of the what keep us fed, it's normal and it's natural. However, what is the wild card for me is the toilet paper. I was not expecting the toilet paper to be a situation
Oh
to
my God.
be on a shortage. Why?
Oh my. Well, people were hoarding it, right? So like that first weekend in what is it, like March 13th or 16th or something?
Around that,
I know dates don't really matter, guys, right now. It doesn't matter, but
it, time is a
back in the
concept.
day. So toilet paper shortage. I remember, so there's two things that I remember reading about the toilet paper shortage. One, it was, I think people thought because we were going to be stuck in our home and we couldn't leave, I think they really thought like all the stores were going to shut down and everything was going to be like a wild zombie apocalypse or something. They thought that they needed to basically stock up on toilet paper. Why toilet paper? I think people can't imagine a world where they don't have toilet paper. Like, how do you deal, like, you can't, wipe your butt or something. And I also blame Doomsday Preppers TV show for this. So I don't know if you're all familiar with this show. If you are not, please check it out on Netflix. And Doomsday Preppers are basically people that believe that a crisis is imminent, so it's going to occur, and that they need to basically create a bunker or some sort of like safety place or stock up on food to survive it. So in a sense, these people may seem crazy, but if I'm sure right now they're feeling very justified in all their prepping and whatnot because they're like, I'm great. I can live in my basement, my bunker, my cabin forever. But I kind of blame that show because they definitely had a lot of like hoarding and stocking up of toilet paper. So that's where people went, in my mind.
Incredible.
What
Like
about you? What do you think? What's
it
your
just
toilet paper theory?
blows my mind. Like you can use the shower. Like why?
No.
I would have thought bread for sure, water
Yeah,
to be the shortage, but yeah,
yeah,
I
toilet
just
paper.
it's just I'm just so happy to be a human and it's like have those mysteries, right? Like I don't think I will ever understand. Now, so we've been talking about like the negative consequences and the panic shopping, like the toilet paper situation, but we haven't dedicated time to the good things that come with it. And perhaps we touch with the like rights for women in terms of equality, or at least the beginnings of equality at work. But there's so many other things that we are now experiencing that we cannot take for granted, or basically people are not making as much news as others, right? Like I've seen initiatives myself, like scaremongering. So this is
Mm-hmm.
have you heard of the word scaremongering?
Yes.
Right. So this this group called Caremongering, they're switching that, right? Like they even had like the trademark and everything, because
Yep.
now is the time. And for the groups, as you mentioned also in history before, the minorities, right? So caremongering it's been going wild and worldwide. They're Canadians, and they're like doing this movement, helping out all the communities that might be sometimes overlooked. The other initiative that I'm aware, and I lived in New Zealand for a while, so I have the connection of SOS Cafe in New Zealand. So like they've collected over 1.2 million dollars in an initiative that came very easy or very organically to help out cafes, right, and small restaurants, if people can donate into that, right? So the reason why I'm mentioning SOS Cafe is because I know when they started. So they started like perhaps last week, the week after the pandemic was declared pandemic in by the WHO. So they've been doing these efforts that they didn't think about. They were just like, okay, let's do it. So kudos for that. Have you seen any other positive initiative after this?
So I did a little bit of research into this, and I was like, what can I find? And as a proud Torontonian and Canadian, I was trying to bring a Canadian example, and obviously Mike had the big one that everyone knows about, caremongers. But so with obviously all the restaurants being closed, you can only do delivery and pickup. Uber Eats has been a big thing, but there's also been kind of there's an issue with Uber Eats in terms of how much money they take from restaurants. So so the owner of Parkdale's restaurant Miss Thing and partner in So Beer Hole, Nav Sangha, he had started a startup called Ambassador, where he was basically building more of a local, like an application for restaurants and stores to do delivery locally. He's been building this basically for a while, and he actually released it to the community for free. So right now, restaurants and stores can sign up to be part of the platform Ambassador for free, and that basically allows you to set up your own local delivery. So then you don't have to charge a middleman. You have to give a middleman as much money. I'm not sure how much they take, but so I thought that was really positive, because one of the things that I kind of think is a little bit, I kind of didn't really like too much, is all these major delivery applications taking so much money from people, and not at a time when restaurants and delivery drivers are struggling. So it's kind of nice to see that all this kind of like local work that was being done that none of us heard about all of a sudden just explodes out into the screen, out to the world, and it's being used. So that's the one thing I found. I'll probably tweet this out later. I'm at Kinga._P, so you guys can read this article. Yeah, that's the one thing that I found. So I'm kind of excited about that.
No, and the other thing also is that if that application and so many other applications are exponentially growing with the technology, the city of Toronto to launch a program on Wednesday that small businesses can apply to e-commerce platform sponsored by Shopify. So shout out to everyone on Shopify. So now they can, because Shopify also it's probably the biggest e-commerce platform in the whole world, that is just specifically for that, and it takes as well like a skill to learn. I wouldn't say that it's difficult, because it's not, but you gotta have like some hints, some secrets, right? So not only providing the e-commerce platform, but also providing the training and providing all the best practices is big part of what's happening right now.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, to just to wrap up, I'm very curious. You know how now millennials are doing. We were talking about the bread, right? I had the chance to talk to teenagers this past week through.
Not in a creepy way, people. Okay.
No,
you
no.
Get any idea.
Yeah, no, but it was such an entertaining conversation, because they were like, they're taking classes online, right? Like,
Yeah.
And by the way, I know. Thanks, Kinga, for clarifying that. By the way, in El Salvador, I had
Just
a
in case anyone tuned in at that moment and heard a grown man be like, I was talking to teenagers.
yeah.
I'm just bugging you. Yeah.
No, but in El Salvador, I had a show for teenagers too.
When
So
you were a
that's
teenager.
I was a teenager, but then I went as an adult. But
It's okay.
the
Yeah.
um for me it was like so fascinating, right? Like for them it's like classes, like, oh yeah, we're taking online classes, but like why wouldn't we take, but why we haven't been doing this for a long time? Like the results are the same, right? And now how are they spending their time? I know that now millennials are using a lot of the TikTok now,
Yep.
and what I can anticipate, and that's been a little bit of the conversation on wait time, the Instagram account, is like I can anticipate that it's gonna happen the same effect of the grandma or the aunt on Facebook, where it's not gonna be cool anymore. So I think that we're reaching at that point on TikTok, because now more and more people over 30, including me, because I'm very proud, are on TikTok, right? And what do you think
Yes.
the teenagers are doing? Like they gotta be doing something, because they're always on their phone, and that's like they're always like this, and they're like not secretive, but like I don't know what they're doing. Like, do you know, like, do you have any cousins or
I do. I didn't have a chance to speak to my nieces and nephews, but for example, I know my youngest niece. She got access to Facebook Messenger for kids. So basically, it's a parents set up Facebook Messenger for their kids, and you can play games and talk to other people on Facebook Messenger. So she'll send me some random drawing and guess this, and sometimes I am so bad at the guesses, but that's how she kind of communicates with me sometimes and with other kids. My middle nephew is so into Fortnite. Oh my god, so
first night
into it.
is no, that's the Strokes. Last night.
I know,
Last,
I know. I'm like
but that's
showing my
2000,
age.
Kinga.
As you can tell, guys, I'm not a gamer. No judgment to gamers. I used to play games, but I am not one anymore. So 100%. So as you can tell, it's not a thing. I think, and Animal Crossing, I believe, is another one that they're kind of doing. But again, and what's in Minecraft, where you build your own world? I think
Yes.
Animal Crossing's got the very similar thing. Yeah, I think so. And I hope eventually they get to go outside again.
You know how we were talking last Saturday that you can have now virtual boyfriends, because they're
Yes.
living in this world that it's been created, pretty much like you're developing your character. You're having like like you're literally having a second life, right? So that's a very, very interesting aspect. We're running out of time. Thank you very much to everyone who joined. I wanna say a shout out in this last minute, and maybe help me out, Kinga, with everyone who were participating on the live streaming on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Remember that YouTube is gonna record this, and you can watch it later too, or if you have something specific that you want to review in the history lessons by Kinga, you can go back to the YouTube channel and get it there. Do you
Yeah.
have anyone there? Shivas, he works at the LCBO. Hi, Shivas.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, guys, we're trying to multitask here. Also, I'm gonna go backwards. Well, we've got a Silica joint, Shirley's Lau, Home Slice Tea, Brittany Grundy, SV Bergen. Oh my, Carter 002, Laurentia, Sam, Frida. Hey, Sweetgrass Beer was here at one point. I actually love their
Yes.
beer. So yeah, it's actually really, really good beer. So hey guys, proud to be here because I brought your beer when your label was just a white printed logo, by the way. So a long time fan there.
Supporting locals. That's what we want.
Always, always.
Thanks very much, Kinga. It's been a pleasure as every
It
Saturday.
has.
And
I
we're
know.
we're gonna have we're preparing. We're almost ready with the podcast version, so you can download it in any podcast with this type of conversations. And we're gonna keep you posted too about these live transmissions in the future, because we have so many things to talk, and we want you to help us.
Yeah, we got some big plans, guys. So thank you
Until
so much
next
for
time.
joining us, guys.
Okay, see you guys. Bye.
Bye.